Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Thank you all for joining. And today we're going to discuss some key concepts: the myth, the truth, the mythology, Sattology, and also other elements today. And we have a very famous guest, a research scholar. I call him the modern Rishi and actually Muni, because Muni means he's a thinker, he's a deep thinker, and he's silent on things which should not be spoken, but he's very loud on things which should be spoken. So therefore, he is Muni. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Nilesh Oak. Welcome, Nilesh ji.
Namaskar, Aditya ji,
Namaskar.
and very glad to be here.
So Nilesh ji, there is a big atrocity on human mind nowadays going on with all the fake news and mythology and all kinds of propagandas. So what do you think is the solution for that?
Solution would be, read Bhagavad Gita. And what happens is, it's not the content of Bhagavad Gita. I mean, of course, that's very important. But it teaches you samyak jnana, the balanced mindset, remaining, not becoming emotional to any inputs. And in a very, so samatvam yoga uchyate, but thinking and we will talk today about samyak jnana a little bit, and demanding evidence, because evidence, something that shows up on the Wikipedia or Google is not evidence.
Yes.
You have to still further verify. But I'll tell you what I do. Now, many people will not like that. But although I watch programs and I watch different things, in my house, there is no TV. I mean, there is a TV screen, but there is no network or anything. And I don't watch TV, or no one in my family watches TV for last 20-25 years. So
Amazing.
That's how I have protected myself. And that's how I can do all that I do.
No, I think that is one of the characteristics of most successful people also. Why to bring somebody else's tension in the house? Somebody else's problem, the soap opera, they make you up and down based on the emotions. And also,
Right.
they don't really teach you any values or anything, generally at the end of the day. Now, and that is the secret of mantra success given by most of the motivational speakers also. They say don't keep TV at the house. Now, how do you stop the banter from the social media then? Because everybody's there.
Again, whether it's a television or whether it is a movie or any kind of entertainment, even say pro sports or social media, I would say, see, these things in some form they existed. Okay, before social media, there were other forms of media, right? The newspapers and news and whatnot. The trick is to, again, that goes back to samyak jnana or the viveka, this apohananja, that's the word used in Bhagavad Gita, is to, doesn't matter what the outside situation is, you have a control over your own senses. So build that control. Okay, so frankly, I don't see social media in a negative way at all. Although there are a lot of negative things that are happening due to social media. So some of the great researchers that I met who are collaborating with me, okay, and they're not always in the public domain, not everyone is known. I met them precisely because of social media around the world. And so it's all up to you at the end of the day, how you make use of it.
No, very good point. And I think you also had a training for that. You were trained to think in that way, and therefore you are able to decipher what is right or wrong, and you can focus on the things which is right. I think that's a really the point which gives you the focus as well, where you are, because most of the people find these topics very boring. And actually these are the topics which actually make you satisfied and happy within your heart. I love it. After doing the research on Yudhishthira, I'm just loving it, the way I have more faith on Yudhishthira. So let's get started now with this presentation.
Okay.
And while you're doing it, so for audience, make notes, because if you have any questions, and you can always revert back on the same video on the YouTube and ask Nilesh ji a question directly.
Right. So let me introduce the topic today. Last time we've completed the 4-part series on Bhishma Nirvan. Then some questions have come out of it, and thank you to those who sent those questions. There was some confusion about the Deva Ayana, Pitru Ayana, and then Dakshinayan and Uttarayan. And last time we talked about that in this episode. It will come out on the YouTube very soon. Today we will talk about history versus myth versus itihasa. Okay, and as the name of this program or the organization or the group that Aditya leads is Sattology. Okay, so Sattology and mythology, or Sattology versus mythology. So that distinction. And so again, we will look at differences and similarities. There are similarities, and therefore people confuse history with the itihasa and even the myth with the itihasa. Also, what happens, itihasa is not an English word, and it has not become a mainstream in English language. Actually, it should be one of the non-translatable from Sanskrit to English language. That itihasa should be used as a standalone as opposed to history. Having said that, many times we loosely translate that as a history, and that also causes a lot of confusion. Okay, so with that, let's look at what the differences is. A good place to start, I would say, if for nothing else, to understand what a colossal confusion is there with respect to these three words, but even for any of this word. So just by history, if you go to Wikipedia and try to say, what is history? I'm looking for a simple definition of history. You're not going to find it. Actually, it has done a good job in summarizing various definitions of history. So what I thought I will do is also I'll give you the link, at least from Wikipedia, and then say go figure. And what I really mean is actually please go there, read different definitions of history, the evolution of the word history, and how it can be used in a very broad sense to the extent it can actually match with the word itihasa, but many times it is used in an extremely reductionist sense. The second word is a myth, again has the same challenge. A typical Wikipedia definition, and I would tend to agree with it because that's how people understand myth, is a traditional story, a popular misconception, a imaginary entity. Okay, but there is more to the myth. For example, especially most of our audience is in North America, and I hope they know the name Joseph Campbell, Joe Campbell, and he is a great inspiration for me. I have read practically every single book or every single writing of his, including the Skeleton Key to Finnegan's Wake. You know, to Joyce's book introduction he wrote, how to understand, how to read the Finnegan Wake. You know, James Joyce book. I have read that. A great inspiration for me. In fact, Joseph Campbell was instrumental, I would say, instrumental through his writing for me to understand or have a glimpse of Abrahamic religions, like how the thinking goes there. Because before that, I tried to read a Bible on my own, Quran on my own, Old Testament, New Testament, and it couldn't hold my attention. You know, I was just getting bored and tired. And to an extent, Joseph Campbell helped me. So now he defines myth in this fashion, which is to say, myth is not necessarily the whatever is being told is false, but it is not to be taken as a literally true, but the message may be still valid. So I think in a very broad way I am saying it. I would encourage you to read entire works of Joseph Campbell, a great American figure. And if you have watched Star Wars, you know he was the inspiration behind the Star Wars, because essentially he brought the Oriental wisdom through his works, and George Lucas captured on it and made the wonderful Star Wars series. Quickly, the third one, again, just for a consistency, I thought I will also pull the definition of itihasa from Wikipedia. Very short section on the itihasa, and not a bad job, but again, I would encourage you to go and read it. Now I'm going to just talk of the definition of a itihasa, because most people either know what history is or what myth is. Obviously, I would encourage them to go to Wikipedia and read more or any other sources. But not many people know itihasa. Many people may not have even heard the word itihasa. So what does the uh, Indian tradition, where the word emerges, what does Indian tradition has to say about the itihasa? So let's look at that. And this is what, there are multiple definitions, but you will find essentially essence is the same. This one comes from Kautilya's Arthashastra. He says Puranam इतिवृत्तम आख्यायिक उदाहरणम धर्मशास्त्रम च इति चेति इतिहासा. Purana, the chronicles of the ancients, okay, the ancient narratives. Iti Vrutta, which is what will come very close to history. Iti is like this is how, or this is. Okay, Vrutta is the narration of the factual events. That's kind of a Iti Vrutta, history. It is also there. Akhyayika, tales. Udaharana, illustrative stories to convey a specific point. Dharma Shastra, okay, the particular rules and regulations in the daily living, in the social setup. That comprises the corpus of Itihasa. That altogether is Itihasa, says Kautilya, the great economist, the great statecraft individual who was there definitely more than 2000 years ago, and his actual time can be anywhere from 2000 years to 4000 years, depending on which particular narration that you trust. Okay, because at least I have not found a very objectively testable evidence, but there is enough narrative evidence to take him to possibly 1600 BCE. Okay, but we are not going into the timeline right now. The second definition, and there are many definitions, I'm just going to share three with you, comes from the Kalana in Rajatarangini. He was a Kashmiri Itihaskar, okay, and he wrote the grantha called Rajatarangini. And his definition, which I quote many times, I must have quoted on this program many times, okay, dharmartha kama mokshanam upadesham samanvitam puravrittam kathayuktam itihasam prachakshate, or purvavrittam kathayuktam itihasam prachakshate. Essentially, looking at the ancient narratives, in an English translation, we say historical events of the past. When they are told in a narrative fashion, sometimes in a poetry, in an interesting fashion, so that it's entertaining, it's educational, it's enlightening. And why? So that it acts as a upadesh, it acts as a guidance for any individual or group of individuals or a society to attain the four purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Okay, and just to keep focus on this, I will not go into what is dharma, artha, kama, moksha, but these are considered the four aspirations for anyone in life to achieve. Okay, and if we have a time, we will discuss more about that. The third definition, I don't know exactly where it comes from. It says Aryadi Bahu Vyakhyanam Devarshi Charitashrayam Itihasam Iti Proktam Bhavishya Adbhuta Dharmayuk. Okay, the biographies of noble people, biographies of great intellectuals, biographies of great administrators, biographies of great individuals, okay, like godly individuals, godlike individuals. And through that information, the objective is to give the guidance for the present and the future. And that kind of narrative, which is filled with curious, mysterious, amazing, factual things. Okay, it's very important. There can be some mysterious thing, there can be some mythical things, because a point needs to be made, a moral point needs to be made. But actually, amazing factual things that we would have a tough time believing it today. Okay, and I'm going to give you one example of that today. And something that provides ingredients for meditation, for contemplation, to solve our everyday problems, that is itihasa. Okay, so these are the three definitions. So quickly, if you have to summarize this, the content of itihas is ancient narratives. They are ancient narratives. There are detailed narratives. Sometimes it will get into a genealogy list, the list of kings, the list of sages. It will have chronology details. Sometimes those could be approximate, very crude chronological details. Other times they can be extremely precise. Okay, so that is all. This is part of itihasa. There could be some simple narrations. Okay, and unless we have a context, we may not even understand why this is being told. Mahabharata is a good example, and so is Ramayana, but especially Mahabharata, which is both Ramayana and Mahabharata are considered itihasa. Many times there are upakhyan. Okay, there are these secondary narrations, and unless you know the context, you say, why is this being discussed? I mean, that happens to me every time I read it. But there is a purpose, and we'll briefly talk about it. Then there are illustrative kathas, illustrative stories. And in this case, the objective of those stories is to simply emphasize the absolute moral codes, the principles, which means just like we see comic stories. Okay, a crow, once a crow was talking to the snake. A story that like that will also show up, and it is very clear there that it's not a crow literally talking to the snake. Nobody is under that deception. But somebody just looking at that as a history says, what is this story doing there? If you understand the definition of itihasa, you will not have that question. So sometimes these moral stories are there for a reason. Then there is a dharma shastra, the discussion of the moral codes, social norms, social codes, what should be done, what should not be done. Now these are very fluid rules, okay, that they keep on changing, and therefore these can be changed. So when we sometimes come across the dharma shastra aspects in our itihasa, we have to keep that in mind, that something that was possibly considered valid, relevant for that time may not necessarily be valid today. Okay, for example, it might say how to take care of the horses at night, because maybe that's how the people were traveling 7,500 years ago, or 14,000 years ago, or 20,000 years ago. Well, now we don't have, everyone doesn't have a horse. Now I know some people who do have a horse. I will not name names, but now we that knowledge, we can take it and apply it to a car, and make sure that the car is well oiled and well polished, and the tires has good pressure, and so on. So some things we don't have to take it literally. That's what we also mean. Then ancient events are told, remember, in a very effective narrative style. So sometimes there can be embellishments, and they are not there as a mistake. They are there for a reason, to keep things interesting. If you remember the quote of uh, I'm not just getting the name, but the author of Grapes of Wrath, um, like he says, a story is remembered by an individual if he or she feels that it is his or her story. So you'll find the generic archetype, the word archetypes. I mean, people will able to relate to that story. And frankly, those of you who are already reading Ramayana Mahabharata, great. If you are not reading, I would encourage you, both Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now, this is something that happened 7,500 years ago or 14,000 years ago in an Indian subcontinent. But frankly, I can assure you, assuming, of course, you will need a good translation and whatnot, you will find it's very much your story. You can relate to what the events that are happening. That is the beauty of that narration, okay, that ancient events, but they are told in an effective narrative style, so that they become relevant. We can empathize, we can sympathize with the events, with the characters and whatnot. And I'm just translating, summarizing what I read on the previous page. The what is it? It's full of biographies of Devarshi, of Rajarshi, filled with curious and mysterious aspects of culture, art, science, technology, tattvajnan, philosophy, darshan, experiential methods, experiential frameworks to actually experience what is said in the philosophy, so that it doesn't remain in the book. Okay, and that's why the stories are there. And then meant to serve. What is the objective of Ityasa? It is meant to serve as a guide for the present and the future. In fact, for example, uh, they are also known as the Arsha Kavya, something that inspires the current generation, inspires the posterity. Mahabharata is also called Pancham Veda. To understand the Veda, which is much more complex, in a simple fashion, and again, we find Mahabharata to be tough, but well, be it as it may. But the idea behind the Mahabharata and why it is called Pancham Veda is essentially it claims that it takes the wisdom of the Veda and it becomes readily available. It makes it readily available to us. All right. And the last one, to guide the individual in their attainment of four Purusharthas. So what I showed on the previous page, I'm just summarizing it. Now, how is this dictated? So there are many things that come into Ityasa, like we listed 8 or 9 things there. This is from Bhagavad Puran, okay, and the verse says, Shruti, the verse at the top here, Shruti pratyaksham aitiyam anumanam chatushtayam pramaneshva anavasthanad vikalpat sa virajyate. He says, in science, we talk about the triangulation of explanation, prediction, and testing. We call it triangulation. In Krishna, in Bhagavad Puran, while giving a discussion with Uddhava, his student, you can say, and he was also his relative, he says even the triangulation is not enough. He says we need a quadrangulation. Unless we do the quadrangulation to understand anything, any claim in the world, if we don't do that, it will lead to the confusion. It will lead to the confusion. It will lead to the delusion, or it can lead to ultimate, what you call, infinite regression. Then who was there before this? Who was there before this? And where did that come from? At some point we will not able to answer this, and it's a great question to ask, but we are never going to get answer, like what Newton did. Newton said the motion exists. Other people were stuck with why motion exists. Newton said, well, a brilliant move actually, very practical, pragmatic move. He said, forget why motion exists. We know it exists. Let's see how we can make a use of it. And therefore, he came up with the laws, and now we have a steam engine and aircraft engine and all that good stuff. So that is again, Krishna is saying the same fashion. Say, do the quadrangulation of this. So quickly, if I put those Shruti, Pratyaksha, Aitiya, Anumana, and with, and I understand some of you will, most of you will not able to read the Nagari script, the Sanskrit script here. Okay, so I'll read that. So here is like, the established knowledge, knowledge from expert authorities, well established, based on experiments and whatnot. That can be quickly given. Then this is like actually we seeing it ourselves, we experiencing it. This is that narration, the story. Through the story, a point is conveyed to us. And this Anuman is like our scientific experiment. We do different things, we look at the evidence, we use our past knowledge, and we triangulate, bring it together to a conclusion, okay, to draw a final inference about that Satya, the Sattology. Okay, we use all of this to come to that Sattology. All right. And in this Itihasa, whether it's Ramayana, Mahabharata, you will continue to hear about the Satya. Okay, such a great emphasis on the truth. Okay, truth triumphs, so to say. Even if your situation is tough, don't deviate from the truth. Why is that? Because that frees you at the end of the day. Tapasya, the role of hard work is emphasized. Okay, then Samyak Jnana that we started at the beginning, we discussed that, how do we avoid all these, what you call, all these distractions, and this through a balanced mind. Okay, so we can actually make a good use of those distractions. And then Brahmacharya, many times in a very reductionist sense, is seen as like a celibacy, but it means a lot more than a celibacy. It actually means study, hard work, contemplation, okay, manan, dhyana, meditation, and whatnot. All right. And so now, so we looked here. I'm going to show you one demonstration from this Pratyaksha. What you will find in the Indian tradition, in that sense, it is truly a distinct tradition, truly a unique tradition. It accepts 6 different types of proofs. Okay, so Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Anupalabdhi, okay, various forms it will accept. But it says number 1 is Pratyaksha. Okay, seeing it, hearing it, okay, smelling it, experiencing it. It can be experiencing in the meditation by the mind. It's not taking it away. So even experiencing it. And I want to show you one experience of it from the Mahabharata. If we have to do the Aitiya, like a Katha, it will take a longer time, so I'm not doing it. And as far as the Anumana goes, like bringing multiple evidence together in this series, those of you who are very loyally following this Friday program, you know that we have done the flooding and destruction of Dwarka, Ravana's Lanka, Bhishma Nirvana, and we have done these. Essentially, those are as a Anumana, but sometimes that takes longer time. This one is also, I'm going to take you through Pratyaksha, like the actual something was said in, something is said in the Mahabharata. Okay, and that people thought, even to this day, today there are many Mahabharata researchers who says that's impossible. Okay, so I came across this in some, what is that, 25 years now, 25 years ago. And I thought, why would Vyasa say something that's not, that's impossible? Now, you know, sometime it can happen, as we saw in the Itihasa, there can be some narrative story, like a mythological stories to convey the point. It's possible. But the context in which Vyasa had said it, I didn't think it will be mythological. It was astronomical. So I thought, let's do it. So today, Aditya, this is what the demonstration I'm going to show you on the next one. To quickly give you the background. Okay, so here, let's see if we can see it. Let's see. And okay, so we are looking at a 21st century, by the way. So this is 21st century, like 2000 CE. So what is that? Some 80 years from today. Okay, but no change will happen. What we see today is what will be seen 80 years from now, as far as this demonstration is concerned. Quickly want to introduce what you're seeing on the screen. This is the ecliptic pole. Okay, like if you consider Earth as like a straight angle and not an incline, so to say, this is the point you will come. If you look at the inclined Earth's axis, that point right now is here. If you where you see NCP, North Celestial Pole. Okay, so that's where right now we have this pole star. That's where we see at night all the stars rotate around that point, around that star. That is this pole star Dhruva Matsya. Okay, because this looks like a fish here. And these lines and circles that are drawn, they are for our reference point. Okay, as everyone, those who have already seen the sky, they know that there are no lines like this. Okay, so this is for our reference point. So this is an ecliptic pole that doesn't change, because Earth's position that way doesn't change, like Earth's position with respect to ecliptic. But Earth is inclined, and that inclined angle is actually pointing towards this point, which is to say the inclined angle will go around along this red line. To For that Earth axis to go around this red line, that is this precession of the Earth's axis, that takes 26,000 years. We are talking today here in 2100 CE. The point I want to show you, this is from Mahabharata, is from the two stars from this area here. A number of you would know this. It's called a panhandle, okay, or a kite and the thread. The pan is this span here, and this is the handle, like the Florida handle. Okay, this is called Saptarshi, or in modern astronomy, Ursa Major, or the seven stars of Ursa Major. So these four stars, and in the Indian tradition, both Siddhanta, meaning astronomy tradition, and also Itihasa tradition, you see the names here. This is in the handle, the middle star here, big star, is called Vasishtha. In modern astronomy, it's a Mizar. Next to that, you see here a small star, that is Arundhati. In the Indian astronomy, in modern astronomy, it is called Alcor. So Mizar is a big star, Alcor is a small star. Okay, and what happens? These all stars, not just those stars, I'm going to show you in a minute, they go around the point of North Celestial Pole, NCP. They will go around this point. And keep in mind that NCP at any given time is going to remain fixed, essentially fixed. So today it is where it is. It's not going to move much in next 80 years. And frankly, it's not going to move much in next 300 years or past 300 years. But if you go thousands of years backwards, and I will show you, so just do note down where this point is. Right now, the NCP is next to this Polaris, and it's saying plus 2000. All the stars will go around it. And this other line that I have shown is the meridian, the line of meridian. What I want you to notice is, as this Vasishtha and Arundhati, they go around the NCP. Who crosses the meridian first? I mean, you can see it anywhere, but the meridian is a good reference point to show who is ahead and who is behind. Okay, so I'm going to start the simulation. Okay, and Aditya, you can see this, right?
Yes.
What I'm saying. Okay, so look, and I deliberately slowed there. So now Vasishtha is crossing the meridian first, and then Arundhati crossed it. The small star crossed it. Okay, so now look, all the stars except the point of NCP, so the Polaris, which is our pole star today, will not move. Okay, actually it's not exactly at NCP, it's like a 0.5 degree from there, so it makes its own small circle, almost not noticeable. But all other stars you can notice. If you watch at night, clear skies, looking in the north direction, and you watch every 20 minutes, you will see the stars that come up in the northeast. They have gone up further, up, and then after crossing the zenith, they start going down in the northwest direction. So notice what's happening. Again, it will slow it down. So Vasishtha, now Vasishtha is going to cross. The Vasishtha is ahead, Arundhati is behind. That is the scenario in 2100 CE. Okay, now we'll go back and look at the 2000 BC scenario. Keep on watching. I'm going to give a running commentary, like that commentary comes in the cricket or a movie. Now, this is the scenario as we saw in our times, 21st century. This is the scenario in 2000 BC. Vasishtha is ahead, Arundhati is behind. Okay, and that's how every day. So what I'm showing you, when I show you one complete rotation, it is the 24-hour rotation. But if you notice, look at the point of NCP. that point of NCP, when we went back to 2000 BC, is no longer at the plus 2000. It's no longer at Polaris. Our pole star has changed, or the point of pole has changed. Again, it doesn't matter where the Arundhati Vasishta are in this whole circle. Vasishta is always ahead, Arundhati is always behind. But I am showing you deliberately at the meridian, because meridian is like the finishing point for our running race, like a 400-meter, 1000-meter, whatever it is. Okay, so otherwise they may go in a circle, but that point, like as if they come straight, and we can decide exactly who was ahead. Okay, that's what counts, right? At the finishing line, it counts who is the first, something like that. It's just easy to see for our eyes. So remember, 2000 BC, Vasishta is going ahead, Arundhati is behind. Now we will go quickly to 3000 BC. Now, what is the significance of 3000 BC? Majority of the Mahabharata claims for the year of Mahabharata war are around the 3000 BC. Now, Vyasa in the Mahabharata states a observation. He says when the Mahabharata war was happening, now we are saying was happening, at that time when the Mahabharata war
Is
is taking
happening.
place. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, he says is happening. While
Yeah.
he's recording it live.
Yeah, so when it is happening, recording live, just day before the Mahabharata war begins, he is saying, Yachaisha Vishruta Rajas Trailokya Sadhu Sammata Arundhati Taya Pesha Vasishta Prushtata Kruta. My dear king, Vyasadeva is saying to Dhritarashtra, the son of the father of Duryodhan, he's saying, my dear king, that Arundhati, okay, the Pativrata Arundhati, the great Sadhvi Arundhati, famous in 3 words, it has gone ahead of Vasishta. It is walking ahead of Vasishta. Okay, it has put Vasishta behind. Vasishta Prushtata Kruta. So what we are saying so far here is Vasishta is ahead. So look at that carefully. Again, I slowed it down. I mean, in the video there. This is made by Amaresh GS, a wonderful IT individual. Okay, so Vasishta is going ahead. Arundhati is behind. Everyone can see that. You can see that, right,
Yeah.
Aditya ji? So hopefully our audience can see that. So that is the scenario, but Vyasa is saying exactly opposite. Vyasa is saying when the Mahabharata war is taking place, it is not Vasishta who is walking ahead, it is the Arundhati that is walking ahead. Again, 4000, not much difference, but you see Vasishta is ahead, Arundhati is behind. Okay. So now what we are going to come across after this 4000 BC, we are going to come at a very specific year, 4636 BCE. That dotted line that you see going through this here, okay, it is drawn for that reason. Those are those 2 critical points, 4636 BCE year and also 10248 BCE. And this is a work, I mean, I did this work more than 12 years ago, and I showed that what Vyasa is saying in Mahabharata with respect to Arundhati Vasishta, it is only possible between 11,091 BCE and 4508 BCE. There is one individual, Sri Siddhartha Chabra. He wanted to test my claim, whether it is true or not. He looked at latest astronomy data and actually showed that instead of 11,091 and 45 BCE, the actual interval with a better astronomy data is even further narrow. And those are those 2 dates. One is a 4636 BCE. Look what happens. Watch very carefully. And Aditya ji, if you, in case you are watching, then I will ask you that question as to what do you see in that particular year, 4636, and we will see it again. What did you notice about Arundhati and Vasishta? Who is ahead, who is behind?
Still, Vashisht is again.
Okay, now I want you to watch very carefully. Now it's going to slow down again. Okay, notice what is happening. That NCP point, Arundhati, Vasishta are on the exactly same line.
Right.
So look, no one is ahead, no one is behind. Now you may see Vasishta ahead simply because Vasishta is bigger.
Right.
So it's first portion. But actually, as far as if you consider their center, the center of NCP, center of Vasishta, and center of Arundhati, that no one is ahead, no one is behind. This is a true gender equality in 4636 BCE.
Yeah.
Okay, Arundhati and Vasishta, they are going together. So I want everyone to notice that they crossed it together. No one is ahead, no one is behind. That's that beauty of that particular year. I'm going to now quickly take you to 5561 BCE, which is I have determined as the year of Mahabharat war based on 300 plus observations. Look what happens. You have to watch very carefully. Not much difference, but it is the Arundhati that crosses the meridian first and then Vasishta. Okay. And that was happening not just in 5561 BC, that is happening from 10,248 BC to 4636 BC. Okay, let's watch it again. Not much difference because they are very, very close to each other. Vasishta is bigger, Arundhati is smaller. But, and again, this is only a demonstration, but Arundhati is crossing first, then Vasishta.
Okay.
Okay, and we can actually stop it also, no need to stop. So that was the scenario in 5561 BC. Of course, any year between 10,248 BC and 4636 BC will satisfy this requirement of Mahabharata. That's not the important point. The important point is any other year outside 4636 BC, which is to say after 4636 BC or before 10,248 BC, will not able to satisfy this constraint or demand of the Mahabharata text evidence. I'm quickly taking you to 10,248 BC. Look what happens again.
Same
As
line.
expected. They're
Yeah.
together. No one is ahead, no one is behind. Okay, so we are going backwards from our time. And once this is done, I'm going to show you one more year and we will stop and then we can discuss few things. So now what happened if we go back in time beyond 10,248 BC, again you will see Vasishta is walking ahead of Arundhati. And that is how it was if you go back 10,000 years, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50, 60, 70, 80,000, 100,000, 200,000. Doesn't matter how far back you want to go. Vasishta was always ahead, Arundhati was always behind. Only during this time that I showed you, now just watch, this is 10,248. Again, you will say they are crossing together. No one is ahead, no one is behind. Okay, that is only in these 2 years. And in between, anywhere in between, Arundhati was ahead as it was shown in the Mahabharata. I'm just as a reference point, I'm showing one more year going back to 14,000. And we can stop this after this. Once it crosses, you will see, let me speed it up a little bit. Okay, because it's not going to cross, show it at the bottom. Okay, so okay, so let's watch this when it crosses. And what I want you to notice, this is 14,000 BC. I just randomly selected a number. Watch carefully. Again, it will be Vasishta now, which goes ahead first.
Correct.
See that Vasishta is crossing first, then Arundhati. So other than this middle period, 4636 BC, always it is the Arundhati. Okay, hold on. So that's that. Okay. All right. So that was my last slide there. And so what I showed, we discussed what is history, what is myth. Especially we discussed what is a definition of itihasa. Itihasa has many elements. It will talk about the laksha, like it will give you a punchline, what you should do. And we'll talk about this punchline after I stop sharing. It will have actually many factual events that by luck we can test it with using modern science and technology. Like I gave you one example. And in this case, what it helped us know about the accurate chronology of the Mahabharata as to exactly when it happened. But that is not limited to that. We can find many other aspects as they relate to that culture, civilization, our health, wisdom, okay, our resources, how to get the resources, how they survived through the famine, and so much information is there which can be useful. How they dealt with epidemics, for example. Okay, a lot of information of that kind that comes, the medicine, okay, and so on. So again, if you are watching in India or if you watch in India with the YouTube, these are my books from Subbu publication. If you are in rest of the world outside India, from Amazon, you can get these books of mine, 3 books there. And with that, I want to stop sharing.
So one of the problems is the connotations of the word myth, because myth is a Sanskrit shabd, and from the Sanskrit shabd, the myth meaning is usually fake, a lie, or in Hindi you call it jhoot,
Yeah.
and imaginary.
Huh.
So when you say the Sanskrit word myth, which is
Hmm.
Latin also, it has come myth, which is again the same thing.
Correct. Correct.
So the problem is when you call our current history as mythology,
Hmm.
then the question comes, why the entire South American history is called mythology?
Hmm.
Because it's imaginary people. There is no, so what they're trying to convey is that there is no basis, there is no archaeological history. You know, the, it's an attempt to destroy the native history. Like for example, they say that the the ancestors of Brazilians were Portuguese.
Hmm.
How intelligent is that proposition? You know?
Yeah. Well, what they should say is that if you look at the current scenario of some of the people in Brazil, their ancestors came from Portugal. That would be a fair statement, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it was a colonial. See, I mean, I can talk of India. I don't know much about South America, how the dynamics played out. But in a case of India, the colonial narrative. I mean, that's true everywhere. But colonial narrative was to suppress the local itihas or history. And the idea is, I mean, you can see these statements. I'm not getting the name right now, but he says if you want some race, if you want some society, some individuals to feel inferior about themselves, destroy their itihas, destroy their
Correct.
history,
Correct.
okay, manipulate it. And the word myth, of course, it's a Sanskrit origin, mithya. And the beauty of Sanskrit, and I'm not saying it's only limited to Sanskrit, many other languages also do a good job of defining what the word is, like etymology and whatnot. But even as a science, say take for example, let's go to Darshana, like Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. In three sutra, now this there Patanjali's objective is very different. Okay, I mean he's talking about the meditation, the dhyana, okay, and basically how to make your mind free from this, and that's our people also confused. When I quote these particular sutras which I'm going to quote, they say, oh, no, no, but that's not the objective. And my point is, I say, if there is a formula how to make a yajna, okay, how to draw a circle, and a formula is given, that the pi value is given, are you telling me that I cannot use that formula to build my house? I can, so I'm not saying that the formula is there is meant for building a house. No, it is meant for building a yajna. So there are three sutra, and I want to come to the mithya. uh, I just now described the scientific process of triangulation, explanation, prediction, testing, or what Krishna says, the quadrangulation, shruti pratyaksham aitiyam anumanam chatushtayam. What Patanjali says very beautifully, he says, how do we get to the truth, the Sattology, how to get to the Sat, the truth? He says, the Pramana, right? So he says, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama, Pramanani. Out of that, we saw two there,
Mhm.
Pratyaksha and Anumana. Pratyaksha, Agama, Anumana, Pramanani. This is Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Samadhipad, Sutra number 7. And see how beautifully they are arranged. The next one, he's saying in a different context, but the next one is that mithya myth.
Mhm.
He's saying viparyayo mithya jnanam atadrupa pratishtham. He defined what the pramana is, how you get to the truth. Okay, proof, how you get to the proof. Pratyaksha, anumana, agama. And he says anything that is opposite to this, anything that is contrary to this, will lead you to myth.
Mhm.
Viparyayo mithya jnanam atadrupa pratishtham. So, like Christopher Hitchens talks about the Hitchens razor. Anything that is claimed without evidence, he says, can be dismissed without evidence. Okay, the onus is on the person who is claiming something.
Claiming it. That's right.
So, and therefore, you need that pratyaksha anumana. So, the next one is that viparyayo mithya jnanam atadrupa pratishtham, and I'll say the third one and give it back to you. The next sutra, number 7, 8, and then 9, it says Shabda Jnananupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpa. Very, very beautiful. He says, people make all the time claims, Mujhe aisa lagta hai, in my opinion, it appears to me, or that person says so and so. He says that is a Shabda Jnan. That's just a verbal claim. If a verbal claim, Shabda Jnananupati, Shabda Jnan, if the verbal claim, Shabda Jnananupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpa, if a verbal claim is not backed by hard empirical evidence, okay, it was Shabda Jnananupati Vastu Shunya, Vastu Shunya meaning there is no empirical evidence. If it's not backed by empirical evidence, it leads to confusion, it leads to delusion.
Absolutely. Yeah, see, most of the times is looks like the campaign of the colonialists have succeeded because they
Mhm.
have created delusion in the mind of the people whom they're trying to colonize,
Yeah.
and created a whole ecosystem that supports their narrative.
Correct. I mean, we have to give them a credit for doing that effective job. It may not be a good, what they did may not be good, but they did it effectively, right? Now, partly, I mean, they cannot get the whole credit.
Yes.
Partly, the natives are to be blamed too. Wherever the colonialist came, in part, of course, that's why I'm saying colonialists did a great job, of taking away I mean, creating a complex, creating an inferiority complex, making natives think their things are inferior to what the colonialists have brought for them. But they succeeded, but the natives should also, like say in the Indian context, but I would say the world context, the native civilizations must also take the blame for sometimes they being dogmatic, they having their internal quarrels, whatever may be the reasons, right? Yeah.
So one of the things with the natives has been, and I think it's a great revival also in a way.
Hmm.
The governments have changed, but these colonialists are still ruling. Whether it's South America, in India, they rule through coconuts,
Hmm.
and through other places also.
Yeah.
India, the whole new breed is there, which is brown from outside, white inside.
Hmm.
Now coming to the, you said it there, they did an effective job,
Hmm.
but the for the Western society, since you live here, it's a society of terms. They
Hmm.
create terms for everything:
Hmm.
classical liberalism
Hmm.
or social liberalism, like
Yeah.
very amazing term, left wing and the right wing. And since they had the impose their own education on others,
Hmm.
they were able to control those terms. And now
Correct.
Indians, they claim to be more purists on English than even the Western people right now.
Yeah.
The largest circulating English daily in the world is Times of India.
Times of India. Yeah. Which is
And
unfortunately a extremely postmodernist paper.
extremely postmodernist, like it's a, I call it postmodernist, like
The
they've gone.
post-truth, everything they want to twist in whichever way it is convenient to them for and useful to them for that day.
This is the first time we have started challenging their narrative, like by
Hmm.
making our own terms. Like you have made your term, and then the we have to start de-evangelizing the terms that they have done.
Hmm.
Like Sattology, we invented the term to oppose mythology, basically the opposing
Hmm.
mythology argument.
Yeah.
But there are other authors of also doing the same thing, many things.
Yeah.
But I would say some authors, there is a joke about one very leading Carlsbad based author. When you ask him that how did you fall down, describe the process of falling. So he will say from verticality to horizontality,
Hmm.
and in the whole cosmology. Now you will guess it whom I'm talking about. Now these kind of Vedvad Rata, like the huge, like the what do you call it? Uh, Building a larger personage
Hmm.
on using bombastic words. So this
Yeah.
this kind of, don't you think this kind of verbiage destroys the struggle of the natives against the colonial imposition?
It does, and what I would add, not but, and I would add that this verbiage comes from both sides. Meaning, see, so for example, in the say Western perspective, say an author like Alain de Botton, if you heard, what he has done is he said, okay, so sometimes religion, that's where people get stuck, but why not just think of a religion? I mean, remove little bit from religion and think of it as a culture. Sometimes the extreme fanaticism that is associated with a religion, that can be tempered, or that can be removed. So there are attempts here, and I thought that is a good attempt, by Alain de Botton, and many people have talked about it. Similarly, in the Indian context, I would say, the and India talks about it. I today mentioned the pratyaksha, the empirical proof or experiential proof. Empirical doesn't mean like some lab equipment. Even your own meditation and you getting a proof, and you telling that process to someone else, he or she does meditation and they get the same experience, that is empirical. Okay, so the emphasis on the empirical, which is so prominent in a Indian civilization, Okay, that needs to be brought out, but West has done a slightly better job on it because of the modern science. It's an emphasis on the empirical. But for Indians, I would say, doesn't matter where they live, they need to embrace empiricism. That doesn't mean get into the reductionist view of science. I'm not saying that. So people immediately ask me, what about yoga? I say, well, yoga to me is very empirical,
So it is empirical science.
right? Patanjali says if you do
Exactly.
this and when you attend this stage, okay, you will get these type of experiences,
Yeah.
and people are getting those experiences.
Yeah, Sankhya Yoga is such a major part of it,
Hmm.
which is all based on empirical science. Now, thank you, Nilesh ji, for a wonderful talk today, and many concepts got clarified. Myth, Sat, Itihas, history, and the history has to be debunked also in a big way, because history also lead to history sheeter. So we will have to work on that. But thank you, audience, for watching it, and you can watch it on YouTube. And some of you have praised a lot on our interaction, because we both, me and Nilesh, come from the same school of thought, and that's why the natural chemistry is seen on the screen. So thank you, namaskar, and keep watching and do subscribe.
Namaskar, thank you.